Hello everyone and welcome to Doll My Shop. Today we're going to be making a t-shirt and a pair of pants for Barbie. And usually videos like this are for my Patreon, but I decided that Patreon is not my style right now and that it doesn't suit what I'm trying to do with the patterns. So we're going to be putting all of the patterns onto Etsy, and they're each going to be $5, and you guys can go pick out the pattern you want and use the videos that I've had provided and make the pattern. Basically, from now on, the patterns are going to be on my Etsy and the tutorials are going to be here on YouTube. So go run to Etsy and get this pattern for yourself so you can follow along with this video and make a Barbie shirt and a pair of pants for your doll. Here are the pattern pieces you should have, and this is what they should look like when they are cut out. You'll have a front piece, 2 back pieces, 2 sleeves, and 2 pieces for your pants. The first thing you're going to do is take the back panels and put it onto the front panel. Make sure the decorated sides of your fabric are facing each other. The first thing we're going to do is sew the shoulders. Use your measuring stick and move the dial to 1/8 of an inch, and then you can mark 1/8 of an inch on the shoulder pieces so you can sew it properly. This is what it looks like when the line is marked. Now you can use your sewing machine and sew the shoulders in place. Okay, the shoulders are sewn together now, and now we're going to pin around the entire neckline so we can sew it in place. The seam allowance is the same here. Make sure to use your measuring stick and measure 1/8 of an inch all the way around, and then you'll be ready to sew. After pinning everything in place, of course. Everything's pinned in place now. We can take it to the sewing machine and sew around the neckline all the way to the edge. Okay, the neckline is sewn in place. Now it's time to put the sleeves on. Make sure that the shoulders meet first, and then you can put the sides and pin those next. I have both sleeves pinned now. Now we can take a marker and use our measuring stick to make sure that we have an even 1/8 of an inch seam allowance along the sleeve. Sew along the edge and try to do a back stitch in every place that will have stress applied to it, which is usually the beginning and then right where the shoulder seams meet together, about right here. You can do a back stitch and then continue on while also pulling your pins out, and once you reach the end you're going to do another back stitch for a double extra secure stitches. Do the same to the other side. Now that the sleeves are attached, it's time to hem the sleeves. Do the same thing. Use your measuring stick and get 1/8 of an inch so you can make sure everything's even. And then you're going to pin it in place so you can sew it on the sewing machine. This is what it should look like when you're finished pinning. Now it's time for the sewing. Don't worry about any back stitches. We'll do that later. Now that everything is sewn together, pinch the sides like this and fold it on top of each other. Once you've done that, it's time to pin everything in place so it will hold still while you're trying to sew it on the sewing machine. This is what it should look like when everything's pinned in place. Now we're going to take the machine and sew along the sides. But first we're going to take our measuring stick and do the same thing we've been doing this whole time and mark in the places where the 1/8 of an inch is so we can follow the line as we sew on our sewing machine. Okay, the sides are attached. Now it's time to fold the seam to the side. This assures that your shirt won't come apart. When you try to split the seam open, it's much easier for the threads to come undone on the sides of your shirt. This will help with longevity with your projects, which means it will last a long time. Okay, this is what it should look like when the bottom is pinned. So that's the hem of the shirt. Now we're going to take our machine and sew across. And also you can use your measuring stick to make sure you still do that 1/8 of an inch all the way across your project. Now take your machine and just sew along. And don't forget to backstitch on starting and the ending points. The shirt is fully put together. Now it's time to put the Velcro on. Make sure that one piece of Velcro is on the top of your project and the other piece of Velcro is on the bottom. So this is going to go on the inside of the shirt, like so, and then we're going to pin that into place. Let's use our pins, and to make sure that the Velcro doesn't move, make sure that you poke your needle on to the Velcro so that the needle is showing. All you have to do is weave it on top of the Velcro. Just mimic the motion that I'm doing while putting the pin onto the Velcro. Now we're going to do the same thing with the Velcro piece on the outside of the shirt. And don't worry that some of the Velcro is hanging off of my shirt right now. I will be taking care of that and cutting off the excess. Now the Velcro is completely pinned, it's time to sew around the Velcro on each side so we can close up the shirt. Now it's time to move on to the pants. I definitely picked the wrong fabric to make the pants out of because they have both solid sides. So for this particular version of the pants, like with the fabric I'm using, I don't have to worry about a good side or the bad side. So if you have any floral or maybe jean fabric, make sure that the good sides are facing each other and that the plain, usually it's a white side, stays on the outside facing you. The reason for that is because right now we're working on the inside of the pants, and we want the pretty side to be on the outside of the pants. The other thing I forgot to mention is that the seam allowance is still 1/8 of an inch, and you can use your measuring stick to measure that. Okay, now that the crotch is put together, open up your pair of pants and we're going to start making the casing. Just roll down your pants a little bit, and you can use your measuring stick to measure 1/8 of an inch, because that will help the elastic stay nice and snug inside your doll outfit without making it roll around or be twisted on the doll. Once you're finished making sure that everything's even and 1/8 of an inch, we're going to be using pins to hold this thing in place. This is what it should look like after it's fully pinned, and then we're going to take it to the machine and sew directly, like very close to the edge of this casing. Try to go as close as you can to the edge without missing. Okay, the casing is finished. Now it's time to hem the bottom of the pants. Again, it shall be 1/8 of an inch, and use your measuring stick to make sure everything's even and pin it in place. Now you can add your pins. And this is what it should look like when you're all done, and repeat on the other side as well. And once you're finished pinning everything, just sew along on the machine and do the same to the other side once you're finished with the first. Now that everything is sewn in place, we're going to put the elastic into the casing. I don't use safety pins because most of the time you have to cater the casing to the size of the safety pin. I use a needle and thread instead, the ones that you use for tapestry. It's a very large-eyed needle, and you just use the needle and scooch it through the whole casing until you reach the end. Now for the case of making sure that it's the right size for your doll, all you have to do is just try and move it on your doll's hip to see if it will go up and down her body type. And the reason I didn't do that in this video is because I forgot, and I'm so used to doing it without the doll, I haven't memorized what the size of the elastic spring should be to get it over the doll. Okay, now that I'm done rambling, make sure that your elastic is secure by putting a pin into it so it won't move around while you're trying to sew it in place. Sew along the edge and don't forget to backstitch at the beginning and near the end. Okay, everything's sewn in place. Now we're going to open the crotch up like this and make sure that the front crotch and the back crotch meet together in the middle. Pin everything in place and then we'll go to the sewing machine. Now that everything's pinned, we're going to sew just around here. It's 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, just like everything else we've sewn in this video. Tip when sewing pants, backstitch right where the crotch is, because when you play with your dolls, that's where the most movement happens. Okay, we're all finished with the outfit. This is how it turned out. I think it looks absolutely gorgeous, and I hope yours turns out just as pretty. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the very next video when we make something else together. Bye-bye!